What up, family? Welcome back to another edition of the Try Life On podcast. For context, today is July the 28th. It is 11:30 a.m. in the beautiful state of Maryland in the United States. I'm US bound today, although I'm headed back to the Mideast in a few days, and it is sunny and beautiful outside my house, and we are lucky to be alive. Wherever you are, God bless you, man. Hope everything is good. Today's conversation is with Douglas Noll. This is a really good one. If you've been following me and following kind of my newsletters and chats, you can kind of tell that I've gotten much more spiritual lately. In that, I've become super curious about understanding how human evolution works, how the human brain works, and why it is we do the things we do and how we think. One of the things that's been the most powerful for me is finding the book the Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy from, I think this is 1963 edition. It's great. And Douglas is kind of on this level, and that's why I interviewed him. Listen, the thing that caught my attention about him was, listen to this. He's a co-founder of Prison for Peace, in which he spent the last 12 years teaching murderers in maximum security prisons to be peacemakers and mediators. This goes back to the notion that our minds are retrainable. We have neuroplasticity. You and I come out from the womb as babies and we are all the same. It's just that family upbringing and formal education and whatever you're exposed to in your environment creates who you are as a human, right? Some people become doctors, some people become race car drivers, some people just end up in education, some people are unemployed. There are certainly socioeconomic issues involved in all of that. I'm just going to put that aside for now. What I'm suggesting is our brains are programmable. We have programming and we can be reprogrammed. We can learn different things. Doug is an absolute master at it. He is an award-winning lawyer, mediator, author, teacher, speaker, and trainer who has mediated thousands of conflicts. Conflict mediation is super important in the Try Life On community because it's inevitable, whether it's in our business life, our personal life, our entrepreneurial life, our love life, conflict is going to come up. How best do we handle it such that we can live our best life now and try life on as much as possible? His groundbreaking work in de-escalating anger in potentially violent confrontation has transformed the lives of thousands. And frankly, this conversation transformed my life as well. I asked him a lot of questions relative to why it is that I think the way that I do. Our brains are designed to take us back to safety, correct? That's a known fact. That's scientifically known fact. But for some reason, since my early 20s, I've had the propensity of just leaning forward, jumping, and learning on the way down, where I think, in my opinion, a lot of people don't do that. What they do is they tend to go back to what they know. They revert to their old programming. Let me do this job because it's safe. Let me go to this place because I know it. And I tend to think the opposite way. I want more relationships and experiences, so I lean into the unknown. That's my programming. You have a certain level of programming as well. And what is super important to understand, we can reprogram at any time. I did an episode on the podcast with a gentleman by the name of Peter Sage. He talked about this, and Douglas talks about this in his own way. It is a super powerful conversation. There's one thing that I just want to highlight, because I won't go too deep this time, but he talked about listening others into existence. When it comes to conflict, we've heard a lot about active listening and just being patient with people. He used this phrase, listening others into existence. It really caught my attention. It's called reflective listening, where we paraphrase, there's core messaging, and then there's affective labeling. It's just this process that he uses to help you understand how to de-escalate things and live your life as much as we can. The other thing he explained to me that really sunk in is that our brains are a cognitive miser. Miser being, it's like shrewd. It tries to keep us small because it wants to protect us. It wants to live. But we can reprogram our brains to be expansive, to lean into the unknown, to try new things, etc. I think this conversation is great for someone who's trying to try life on. It helped me understand myself a bit more. I hope it helps you understand yourself a bit more. Check out Doug. He is an amazing soul. You can see him at Doug Noll, NOLL.com, and you'll understand exactly why it may be worth your while after listening to this particular conversation with lawyer, speaker, author of the book De-escalate, my friend Douglas Noll. How you doing, Doug?
Maurice, I'm having a great day, but every day is a great day for me.
Every day is a great day. We were joking in the virtual green room that you're on the left coast in California and I'm on the right coast in the East Coast. Right coast on the East Coast.
There you go.
I'm not sure which is the right one, but it is what it is. It's my pleasure to meet you, and I have to tell you, I'm gonna go right to the thing about you that just blew my mind and caught my attention, given my background in law enforcement, being a street cop, growing up in the inner city, and being a federal agent. I read about you and did some deep diving about you spending 12 years teaching murderers and probably other folks in maximum security how to be peacemakers and mediators.
Yep.
My man, how do you end up in a position like that? I wanted to go right to the heart of it.
So there is a backstory.
Yeah,
The
please.
short story is with Prison of Peace is that
Mm,
I left the practice. I went back to school mid-career while I was a trial lawyer and
mm,
got my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies and ultimately walked away from my very successful law practice with 1 week's notice in 2000 to become a peacemaker and mediator.
mhm,
In a couple of years later, I developed a very powerful set of skills that allows you to stop fights and arguments in 90 seconds or less. I started teaching these skills, and I'm very well known internationally in the mediation community. Most people know who I am and what I do and what I've done. So in August of 2009, I received a call from a very close friend and colleague of mine down in Los Angeles, Laurel
mm,
Crawford,
mhm,
who read me a letter from a woman serving a life sentence without possibility of parole in the largest, most violent women's prison in the world.
mm,
At that time was Valley State Prison for Women in Chowchilla, California, which happened to be about an hour and 20 minutes from where I live.
mhm, mhm,
And basically, this woman, Susan Russo, was asking if Laurel would come into the prison and teach a group of women called the Networking Group, which consisted of all lifers and long-termers, to teach them how to stop prison violence because they were tired of the violence. And
Nice.
Laurel read me the letter and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I thought about it for a second. And I said, if this is the real deal, we should do this."
Mhm,
So it took 6 months. We had never dealt with prison bureaucracy before. It took us 6 months to finally get the go-ahead. So we
mhm,
started in April of 2010 with 15 women, and we designed a curriculum because we're both professors at Pepperdine University School of Law, Caruso School of Law, the Strauss Dispute Institute, the Strauss Institute of Dispute Resolution. We're adjuncts there, so we teach at a very high level in graduate school, and we had to come up with a completely different kind of curriculum
mm,
because we knew that our students were going to have zero skills. That's why they're in prison.
of course.
So we designed this curriculum that started with the concept of teaching them basic people skills. In fact, in the early days, that's a book we used, People Skills by Robert Bolton. And part of what we taught them was how to listen to emotions to calm people down, which is the basic skill that I developed.
Mhm,
And we didn't know what to expect, but what we saw was transformational with this first group of women. I could tell you
okay.
story after story after story, but essentially the way we did it then is we went every day, every week for 1 day a week for a full day
Mm.
and trained them starting them at ground zero. And 16 weeks later, they would be mediators. And it was exhausting hard work. And all of this was pro bono. We didn't get paid a dime for any of this.
But the original intent was to help them with their quality of life within the prison, essentially, because
Their
they were,
community. They lived in a violent community.
it was a violent community.
And
Okay.
the prison guards instigated the violence in many cases.
Right. That
Not
was the
true today.
natural speech there.
Not true today, but back then that's the way it was.
Mm,
And so they wanted a way to stop fights and arguments from escalating into violence
I
because
see.
it's really disturbing them. They're living there, and they're never, none of these women were getting out. Well, that's not true. Many of them did get out eventually as a result of prison of peace. So it was amazing. I mean, at that time, the prison population was 3,600 women in a prison that was designed to hold 2,400 women. I mean, they were
Oh
severe.
man, they were sardined in there.
Oh, totally, and horrible. We had 800 women on a waiting list within the 16 weeks of training. And that's how it started. And we spent 3 years there.
Wow.
Our model was to train trainers within the prison. So we took our very best students who had leadership capability and we trained them how to be trainers. And then they took over the program and kept it going until 2013, when the prison was repurposed to a men's prison. And
Oh, I see.
women at that time were transferred out. There are at that time, two other women's prisons in the state. Some of them went across the street to the Central California Women's Facility. Some of them went down to Chino. We said we'd follow them, and we did. Our program in Chino at CIW, California Institute for Women, is still going strong, very successful.
Mm,
The CCWF program completely failed, and we didn't know it at the time, but it was because there was an incredibly corrupt administration.
gotcha.
And the last thing they wanted was us in there, a couple of lawyers in there, nosing around and talking to people and figuring out what was going on.
Yeah.
So it failed there. But then what happened was, when VSPW, Valley State Prison for Women, became a men's prison, Valley State Prison, we got a call from the warden, who knew us, and said, "We want you to come in and train the men." And we said, "No, we're not getting paid. We can't do this. Hard enough just to work with the women." Then we got calls from the inmate family council. Family members said, "Could you please bring prison of peace in?" And so finally we said, yes, we would do it.
Paid or still unpaid?
This is all unpaid.
All unpaid.
We're paying for everything out of our own pocket. We're not making any money. It's bankrupting us, right?
Wow.
Gave up our professional practices to do this work. So then we went in, we had no idea how the men would react to this. Well, they were better than the women.
Really?
Exactly the same kind of transformational results. So we stayed with the men for 3 years, got them up and going, and it's still a very strong program, even all these years. And then the state started issuing programming grants, and we applied for the grants. We were denied twice, always told you're too expensive. We want to go with the cheap people. But after 3 years, they learned that cheap does not mean good.
Cheap does not mean good at all.
They finally funded us. And so now we were able to expand into multiple prisons across the state. So today, we're 15 prisons in California. We're in 14 prisons in Greece, I think, 3 prisons in Italy. And we've been in 1 prison in Connecticut, but we're about to expand into, I think, 4 or 5 prisons in Connecticut.
Wow.
And
you got to be proud of that, man, that this is
it's a legacy project. And
good for you.
the transformations that have occurred. Every prison, well, not every prison has been successful. Where we have been successful, our students have radically reduced prison violence.
Amazing.
We've had over 700 lifers released in California on parole. Only 1 of them has reoffended.
Just one.
Just one. And he was mentally ill. We were not surprised when we heard that reoffended.
I love this, and maybe because of where I currently am on my journey in life, and we talked about it a little bit, I have come to, and I have to go through my own not training, but in my 25 years of being a corporate executive and then military officer and a police officer, you can imagine the types of escalated situations I would get into, and you got to learn treat things with patience, empathy, listening, things of that nature. I'm not trained in the way that you might be trained, but we all gain those skills, especially as we grow up. But the one thing that has come to me, and I'm curious how this played in the context of your training, is to control my reactions. And I've gotten so good at it, but I think because I was in white collar, blue collar, no collar, grew up in the inner city, I've kind of seen it all, been to 100 countries, that kind of thing. People just want to be heard sometimes. And we have a propensity to just react without listening. And that's what tends to escalate. If you can pause, this is no joke. When I was a street, I think this was the best manifesto with me when I was a street cop. I just got everybody to pause. Just hold on a second. Just wait. Let's just see what they're saying. And don't respond for 30 to 60 seconds. Just wait. Controlling your reactions. So I'm curious if that played a role in your training, and then what was the training that helped them avoid escalating into violence? Like what was the curriculum per se?
Okay, you make a lot of really accurate points. Number one, every single person needs to be heard. They have a deep desire to be heard because they're never listened to. We call it listening other people into existence.
Listening to other people into existence?
Listening others into existence.
Listening others into existence. Heck yes.
And we teach 3 levels of reflective listening. First of all, we tell everybody, if you've ever learned active listening, forget everything you ever learned about active listening. It doesn't work. It has never worked. It never will work.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I've got a blog post on my website that explains the history of active listening and where it came from and how it evolved and why it is so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conversation for another day. So we teach,
Okay.
instead of active listening, we teach reflective listening, 3 levels. We teach paraphrasing, core messaging, and affect labeling. Paraphrasing is obvious, but the thing that's different about reflective listening than active listening is we always use a you statement. So I would say, so Maurice, what you just said was X, Y, Z. Core messaging is the process of helping people find their intended meaning. Sometimes we'll be with people and they're just talking and talking and talking and talking. And what they're really trying to do is they don't know what they're trying to say. And so in core messaging, we teach the use of metaphor to help people find their meaning and be heard. And then the 3rd level, which is the deepest level, is affect labeling. And this is where the secret sauce is. In affect labeling, we ignore the words, read the emotions, and reflect back the speaker's emotion to them using a you statement. So an example might be like this. So Maurice, man, you are really pissed off. You're angry, you're frustrated. You feel completely disrespected. You're feeling ignored and not heard and invisible, and you feel completely unappreciated and unsupported. And you're worried and anxious about this. It's concerning to you. And you're really offended that all this is happening to you. And you're also a little embarrassed and humiliated because it's like you're a nothing. And it's making you sad because the connection that you hope to have isn't there. And that's very upsetting and distressing and is depressing. And at the end of the day, you feel completely abandoned and rejected and all alone. And you feel completely unloved and unlovable. Now, you're none of those things, but did you feel how you settled into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What's going on? There's a brain scanning study that came out, and I developed this skill in 2005. A brain scanning study out of UCLA came out in 2007 that shows exactly what happens in our brain when you do what I just did. And to summarize a neuroscientific paper, which is fairly complex, essentially what we're doing is lending our prefrontal cortex to the speaker for the time it takes to reboot the speaker's brain so they can reassess where they're at. And the brain scanning study shows that when you affect label, you inhibit the emotions and at the same time reactivate the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is where emotions are stored. The abstract concept of emotions are created and stored in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. When it gets overwhelmed by emotion, it can't access that database. Therefore, there can't be any reflection. And so what we're left with is reactive behavior, which to your point is what causes conflict.
They need time to reboot.
That's right. So when I affect label you by labeling your emotions, it takes less than 90 seconds. You cannot stop it. Your brain will automatically calm down. And this is true for every human brain on the planet. It doesn't matter what culture, language, where you live, it happens for everybody. Because all human brains are designed the same way. And that's why it's so powerful, is because it's universal in terms of what it does. And today I teach this skill. And my promise to my clients is learn this skill from me and you will never have a fight or argument again in your life.
What affect labeling?
It's spelled A-F-F-E-C-T, affect.
Affect labeling.
Right.
That was
Stop
powerful.
all fights and arguments.
Yeah.
Around you, you'll calm an angry person or an angry child in 90 seconds or less. You'll never have a fight or argument again, and you will do all of this. And this to your other point that you asked about, by remaining calm, confident, and compassionate, no matter how intense the situation is. You will never be ruffled by somebody's upset. Even if they're screaming at you, you will not be bothered by it. You'll know exactly what to do and what to say and how to do it, and you'll know exactly what the outcome is going to be.
The interesting thing is you were saying that to me. You and I are clearly not having an argument.
Right.
and it took me, maybe I was at an elevated state for other reasons beyond our interview or our chat at the moment. Let's say family stuff that was going on before the conversation. But I felt myself come down. I felt myself, oh, no, he's listening to me. No, but he's not. We didn't just have this conversation, but he's listening to me somehow. I can't quite understand what is happening to me right now.
Or another thing that people say is that, oh, he really gets me. He really understands.
Yeah.
He really hears me. He's really validating me. Those are all the common responses to when you're affect labeled. What makes it
Yeah.
so interesting, Maurice,
Yeah.
this concept of affect labeling flies in the face of everything we think we know about listening. It's counterintuitive and counternormative. It's counterintuitive because you would never think
Right.
to reflect somebody's emotions, and it's counternormative because we have this cultural bias against emotions going back 4,000 years.
Hmm.
Tells us that emotions are bad, emotions are evil. And also we're using a you statement, which
Hmm.
is totally counter-normative. And yet neuroscience says this is the way we do it, and it works. So
Uh,
we have to go through a lot of taboo, break through a lot of taboo to really master these skills. It takes a little bit of courage in the beginning.
I think everybody has not I think. Obviously everybody has conflicts in their life, but I can say with a certain degree of confidence based on my experience out on the street or being in diplomatic roles overseas and stuff, that approach would have probably worked for 99% of things I ran into in reflection.
Absolutely.
Why do you say that we are 98% emotional and only 2% rational?
Because there is no such thing.
Why are we like that? Like
Well,
why do we do that to ourselves? Or maybe that's just the way our brains are built.
yeah. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about rationality.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as rational thought. There is no such thing as rationality. This is a myth that has been perpetrated by theologians and philosophers for 4,000 years, and there is no science to support that we're rational beings. We have the ability to learn how to be critical thinkers, to use quantitative and qualitative analysis, to use inductive and deductive logic, to do linear problem solving. And to build algorithms and understand mathematics and all of this stuff. That's all our capacity, but that is not our essential nature.
Mm.
We are emotional beings
Mhm.
because every decision we make is emotional. There is no such thing as a rational decision. Even when you get down to the synaptic level in the brain, whether or not a nerve or a cluster of nerves are going to fire one way or the other is making a basic judgment.
Mhm.
Am I approaching for pleasure or am I avoiding for pain? All emotion.
The layman's person like me has heard over the years that our brain is more concerned with our safety than advancement or what have you. So when we
Correct.
do things, and you and I were talking about how people are trying to try life on and do different things in their life, take some risk, go here and there. And the first thing people will do is if they have an opportunity or a life desire, well, here's the reasons why this don't work. Let me just go back to that safe job or this
Well, sure.
safe thing.
Mhm.
Is that what maybe that's what you're referencing? Is that
That's an
there is
emotional
no,
decision.
it's an
It's an
emotional
emotional
decision.
decision, to your point, to move to what's safe and known,
Hmm.
to not take risk, and not to exert the energy that it takes to overcome the status quo.
Mm.
Because it takes energy, and the brain is a cognitive miser. And the reason that it's a cognitive miser is because thinking requires a huge metabolic demand on the human body.
Mm.
The brain avoids high level system two thinking at all costs. And that's why
Because of the energy usage?
too much energy usage. It takes up too many calories. So it's much easier to just
Wow.
go along by habit using system one processes, which are very low in metabolic demand, and move that way because it's a lot less effort. I mean, think about it. I mean, I like to tell the story about when I opened my first law book,
Hmm.
textbook in law school.
Hmm.
I read the first paragraph and I said, what the hell does this mean? And it was painful. The cognitive load in law, and it's true in any profession, but
Right.
I'm a lawyer, that's my background. The cognitive load in the beginning was huge to try to understand this. It was in English, but it didn't read like English. And just learning that was a huge, huge effort. And so that's why our educational system does not understand this. We are very poor
No.
at teaching children how to learn and how to think. But understand at its essence, thinking and learning is effortful. So when people come to you and they say, my life is this and I want to change, they have to be willing to expend the psychic and metabolic energy
Yes.
to make the change. And that they've got a lot of forces against them doing that. Not
Yes.
least of which is their brain saying, no, don't do that. Too much energy.
Wow.
And you also, the other thing to remember is our brains evolved over millions of years to solve the problem of being bipedal in a food scarce environment where environmental conditions were very harsh. And that the brain was evolved to solve those problems in a small clan of 10 or 15 people, because we're social animals. And the brain has not, the brain is essentially unchanged for the last 230,000 years. And
Yeah.
so when we layer on all this cultural baggage around emotions and around rationality, it's all bullshit. Emotions, we're emotional beings, but it's all cultural baggage that gets in the way of who we are authentically. And
yeah,
when we're talking about fights and arguments and conflict, it's all emotional. So I tell people, and relationships, I tell people in relationship, abandon reason. Reason has no basis and no place in any kind of relationship, because relationship is all emotional.
if relation is so I just went to a romantic relationship in my past, and let me see if I apply that, and if you abandon reason and you go with emotion, how do you apply it? Like how do you, I understand what you're saying. Like reason would say, listen, we shouldn't have fought about this last night because we have things to do in the morning.
Right.
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 Like, but that's not, I hear what you're saying. That's not going to work. So if I go
Or
back to emotion,
then you say, oh dear man, you're really upset. You're frustrated and you're really angry at me. You don't feel heard, you don't feel respected, you don't feel listened to. And you're really worried about our relationship and where it's going. And you're sad because you don't feel the connection that you want to feel and the love that you want to feel. And at the end of the day, you felt abandoned and rejected and betrayed. And you feel like you're all alone and unlovable. And it's really upsetting.
it'd be very hard for people to rewire to think that way, which is
Well, this is
precisely
what I
why you
teach
do.
people.
It's what you
I
do.
teach. And it actually takes about 6 to 8 weeks to be able to do this. It's mastery takes longer, but to be able to be effective at it takes about 6 to 8 weeks of training, 1 hour a week.
So there is neuroplasticity. Your brain can be
Absolutely.
rewired.
I taught this to life inmates. If I can teach a life inmate to be a peacemaker
Yeah.
effectively, what can I do with a normal person?
So let's go there. Let's go there, because the people that are listening are well, nobody's normal. But like all of us, we all got some quirkiness, right? That's the uniqueness that we are. But let's go there, because somehow in my journey, Doug, and I'm not saying I have figured everything out, but I did figure something out. And what I figured out was to lean into risk. I have leaned into relative risk my entire life, so much so that my catchphrase for myself is to just do and course correct along the way. You and I were talking about the fact that I live between Maryland and Lebanon now. That's not a typical place where someone would go live, but it felt right to me. So I just did it, and I will practice life. I will practice going back and forth, practice how to navigate, build a network. It feels good here to me. There's something there. I think my brain is wired for building a life book. I think my brain is wired for experiences and relationships, and to climb one mountain and come back down and climb another and not get stuck. That's the way that I operate.
Let me make this observation, because
Yeah.
you have a life that is very different from
Okay.
most people.
Okay.
You have so many different life experiences that you have a very broad horizon to look at. Most people don't have that. And so it's very difficult for them to assess risk and to make decisions about change because they've got blinders on. you don't have any blinders on. You have had
No.
so many different life experiences that you don't even have to consciously assess risk unless it's a physical risk that you've got to look at. But you can look at a lifestyle risk or a financial risk, and you've got so much experience that your brain can immediately draw upon that experience to assess, is this the right thing to do or not? And to you, it seems like it's very fluid and intuitive and easy. It's not. You've trained over many, many decades to be able to do this. And the skill you've developed is not the usual skill that most people have. Most
But
people think about how narrow they are in terms of their life experience.
okay, so thank you for saying that. And I receive that. And it's hard for when you are the person, it's hard for you to see yourself. So I really appreciate you saying that. In order to help other people, somehow that initial mechanism came to me because of a trip that I took when I was 15. I won't get into it. It was in France. It just opened my brain to life.
Right.
And then I found a financial book when I was 21 that gave me real estate. Real estate gave me passive income, ability to be wherever you want. So without having to be an employer. So then I pieced them together and I said, if I can create passive income, I can create time. If I can create time, I can go back to when I was 15 and have more experiences. From there, life changed for me. But I had those two catalytic things happen to me that formed me.
That's right.
I don't know the best. I try it in coaching. I'm not a medical guy, but I am a guy who's made some strides. How do you help people like open their mind to exactly what you said? Hey, I'm trying to show you that you have these blinders on about life. You have this status quo default language that's going on in your mind, and you can break it if you want, but they're so deep in it, they don't know, they can't even see that they're deep in it. And maybe this is why I started the podcast, and I'm finding people like you. How do we help people get out?
I think in that circumstance, we challenge them to start with tiny little baby steps and do something different. Go out. What can you do this week that is outside of your everyday routine that, in my opinion, serves other people? What can you do to serve somebody else this week? Just one thing. That's all you have to do. And report back next week what happened. And you start with really small incremental steps. When I coach for incremental improvement. I don't never coach for perfection. All I want is one little change on every coaching moment. And if you just add up those incremental changes over a year, you see a radical transformation. Don't ask people to dig out of their hole. They can't. Ask them to shift just one thing. Who in your life can you do one nice thing for this week without them even knowing that you did it?
Little incremental things.
How can you serve somebody this week in a way that is not self-aggrandizing to you, but is a service to them? What can you do? What new experience around you can you do that's very different than what you've ever done before? Maybe it's walking in the park. Maybe it's riding a bike. Maybe it's turning off the phone and listening to the wind. Just one tiny little thing that's effortless to do. It's not effortless, it's effortful, but it's so small that the amount of effort necessary to make the change is difficult. And you would be amazed at how, over a very short period of time, how you start to grow and change. I'm a musician, and so one of the things that I don't remember to do this enough, but I really try to listen to the sounds around me. Every morning at 5:30, I get up and walk 3 miles around my ranch, and I listen. What's the music that I'm hearing right? Not in my ears, but outside in nature. Is there a wind? Do I hear animals or birds? Do I hear nothing? Is it completely silent? What do I hear? And pay attention to that just for 3 or 4 minutes. And then you start to learn, then the next step is to learn how to learn. All right, so now you've had these experiences and now you're getting out, you're starting to climb out of your hole. Now you got to go learn something.
Yes. What
do you want to learn? And you got to do something that you would really, really want to learn, because if it's not something you really, really, really want to learn, then when it gets hard, you're going to quit.
It's got to be passionate about, have some
Maybe you
emotion
say, I
tied
want
to
to
it.
learn how to play guitar. I play jazz violin myself, but maybe you want to,
Oh.
I don't advise that for people.
Okay.
It's tough.
Yeah, man.
I'm getting there, but it's not an easy instrument.
Yeah.
Guitar. Everybody wants to play guitar. All right. Then what are you going to commit to doing? The first thing you're going to do is go find a guitar teacher nearby and pay him $1,000 if you can afford that for guitar lessons for the next 2 years.
hmm
And then you're going to commit because once you put the money out, now you've made the
It's
commitment.
different. That's why I tell people to
Don't
pay for
want
mentors.
You don't want to, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And more importantly, I charge a lot of money for what I do.
Sure.
Not so much, oh, of course, what I teach is priceless, but
Yeah,
I want people committed
absolutely.
to work through the hard spots. And when I'm mediating, I charge a lot of money to mediate disputes because in the mediation, there are going to be rough spots and the temptations be to get up and walk out. No, you can get up and walk out, but you're walking away from $25,000.
And
People
people
won't
have learned that people, we've been in our traditional Western culture, we've been taught the value of money. When someone pays 25,000 for you or $10,000 for me, they're not going to easily walk away from that because
Right.
they place an enormous amount of value
That's right. So
in
that's
that.
the other thing that we have to help our clients with and understand that it's not about the money, it's about the commitment they're making.
The commitment behind it.
And
Yes.
the
Yes.
fear of loss has to be greater than the pain of learning.
I love that. I love that. People
That's
should
how
understand that.
how you help these people. And believe me, not everybody that's down in the hole that you're talking about is willing to make that commitment
No.
because it takes energy to change, and that is painful.
And the brain does not like to expend that amount of
That's right.
energy.
So you have to be pretty motivated. You're only
Wow.
working with 2 or 3% of the population at a given time will be ready to make this shift.
You know, the two things that you told me that really stuck with me already are, one, the brain doesn't like to expend a lot of energy.
Right.
I think mine does. Mine does, but I'm wired that way. My
That's
brain
right.
doesn't like to expend minimal energy because then I think I'm not getting the most out of my human existence.
Right.
The first
Well,
thing.
you've conditioned yourself in a very different way.
Yeah.
Most people
Yeah.
don't have that conditioning.
No doubt. And then the second thing you said is, and I love this, and I will quote you so many times on this, but listen others into existence.
That's right.
I wish school, police academy, federal law enforcement academy, executive leadership, management schools, the art of, what did I go to? I went to military management courses. No one has ever said anything in that realm. It was always just be patient and listen what they have to say. Form your words.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Just that one phrase you said, everything clicked for me.
Right. It's wrong. I've talked to law enforcement agencies about doing de-escalation training. In the post standards here in California, one of the very first standards is learning how to listen and de-escalate. And what they teach is crap. It's not based on science and it doesn't work. But all they're interested in doing is checking the box. They're not interested in learning the real skills, interestingly enough.
I'm validating what you're saying from my 3 decades in the professional space and the types of things that I've done and the people I've seen. What would you say, just as a parting thought? This is beautiful, man, because even on my own journey, I'm starting to realize and advocate and articulate to people that our external world is a reflection of our inner thoughts, period.
Right. That's true.
So many people say that, whether it's, Dr. Joseph Murphy or whoever, it doesn't. What would you say to people, like one thing based on your work, helping people change their mindsets, de-escalation, one thing that you would say to all these folks who are interested in trying life on their way? They want to make a change, they're stuck. They have an idea that life can feel. So happy you said about the 98% emotion, because life is emotion. It's not that I go to the Mideast because I love the Mideast. It's the emotion that the Mideast gives me.
Right.
It's the emotion that I get when I'm by the Mediterranean Sea. I live on a house in the Mediterranean Sea and I live at a house on the Atlantic Ocean. They give me two totally different emotions. Totally different. But I really like the one on the Mediterranean Sea.
Right.
What would you say to people, one thing to help them try life on, to try to get the most emotion out of their life, who are just kind of stuck and afraid to take that jump?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is learn how to master your emotions. You have to learn how to affect label. You have to learn how to read other people's emotions and label those emotions. And that teaches you how to become self-aware of your own emotions. Emotional self-awareness and self-regulation are foundational skills of life. If you don't have those skills, there is no way you can succeed. And what we do is we have this perverted sense of stoicism. It's not really Stoic philosophy, but it's a perverted sense of stoicism that says that we've got to be rugged individuals. Don't cry. Don't repress your emotions. You got to be tough. Utter bullshit. Utter bullshit. And it's cultural bullshit that goes back for a lot of different reasons why it exists. But we've got to abandon that idea and learn how to become masters of our emotions. And by mastering emotions, I don't mean repression or suppression. I mean learning how to feel and name the emotional experience that other people have, and feel and name our own emotional experiences in the moment and be aware of them. That changes everything.
I'm going to have to lean into your information, sir, because it just rings so true, not only for what I'm doing today, but what I did yesterday. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing this. I hope they do. And I hope they heard those two things that now I can't see where I wrote them, but the listening into existence, man, that hit me so hard, brother. How do people find you if they want to learn more information about what you do and who you are?
Website is Doug Noll, DOUGNOLL.com. Email is Doug@DougNoll.com. I'm a sole practitioner. I don't have an entourage. I answer all my own emails. So people can just reach out to me. You can Google me, Doug Noll or Douglas E. Noll, and you'll find out more about me than you ever want to know about. So
Love it.
I'm out.
Love it, man. Well, Doug Noll, thanks for joining me on the Try Life On podcast today. Thank you for giving us that kind of wisdom. And you're right. There's no way they're going to teach us that type of stuff in school, because that would pull us away from this status quo. Let's go be just the employee. Let's go build the economy. Let's go. Nope. If people had this level of emotional understanding about their emotions and where we're going, how much we're supposed to plug into planet and Earth, as I say, one of my catchphrases, then the world would just be different. But we should be choosing consciously, not unconsciously.
Correct.
And that's what you're getting at. So I appreciate you giving me a bit of your time, man. And it's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks, Maurice.
My pleasure. Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.